On December 21st, 2011, Postal 3 came out. It sucked. You probably know the story by now. Running with Scissors wanted to make a big game, so they hired Akela and Trashmasters. The economy crashed, Akela was bleeding money, and they released the game in an awful, unfinished state. Tale as old as time. Running with Scissors often claims that Postal 3 isn't the game they wanted to make, and that it greatly differed from their vision. Sadly, they never shared their original vision, but this doesn't mean that we don't have access to it. You see, on June 11th, 2020, a very early version of Postal 3 was leaked online. People were really excited about this, but not because of Postal. For whatever reason, this alpha build of the game also included beta versions of Half-Life 2 Episode 2 and Team Fortress 2. So, despite having a very early build of Postal 3 and having a ton of design documents, never before seen concept art and developer videos, no one cared, until now. What you're about to see is the first proper deep dive into the 2020 Postal 3 leaks, starting with checking out the included build. Welcome to Al-Ost, also known as the Postal 3 Alpha. Most files are dated December 22nd, 2008. Trying to start a new game won't take us anywhere, as the game doesn't have any chapters. To enter different levels, we'll use the developer console, accessed by pressing the tilde button. Loading into one of the maps, you'll immediately notice many differences from the final game. The Postal Dude uses a different model, there's a console log in the top left, a menu on the right, and the Postal 3 HUD is nowhere to be seen. The Half-Life 2 Episode 2 HUD is used instead. The player movement also differs greatly from the final game. In Postal 3, your movement options are walking, running, taking cover, and vaulting. You could also kick and use human shields. In the alpha, your options are walking, running, jumping, and crouching. You can also press F to turn on a flashlight, and you can pick up and throw props. Sounds familiar? The movement in the alpha is taken 1-to-1 from Half-Life 2, which is to be expected as it's a Source Engine game. The alpha also has a button dedicated to switching perspective, allowing you to play in either first-person mode or third-person mode. Third-person mode is the default, and it's clearly the intended way to play the game. There are no first-person animations, so weapons like the pistol will take up most of the screen. Speaking of the weapons, the build features 4. First are the hands, which do nothing and would probably be selected after holstering a weapon. Second is pissing, which works mostly as expected. Third is the Badger Saw. Its texture has a green overlay, probably used for some sort of debugging. Holding the attack button will make it attack over and over in front of the dude multiple times per second, acting like the chainsaw in Postal 2. The last weapon is the Desert Eagle, which behaves exactly like the Half-Life 2 9mm. An important thing to mention is that they didn't quite figure out shooting in the third person in this build. The crosshair is only accurate at certain distances, which makes the weapons pretty hard to use. The alpha build includes 39 maps at various stages of completion. The lamest map award goes to Police Station. It crashes the game. Startbox and Testbox are both very similar. Both place the dude inside a decently sized cube. The map simply titled A is another square box. There is a crowbar and a stun button on the ground. PVC Test puts you inside a cube with an Alex NPC. She will move away when the dude tries walking into her. AA Act Boozy example is the next test map. There's a few missing textures, hint buttons on the ground, and a weirdly behaving NPC. Shader example is an almost exact copy of the previous map. The only difference is that the NPC is replaced by a cube with broken textures. Next up, a map simply titled Test. It puts the dude inside yet another square box. Inside are 2 empty freezers, an empty vending machine, a computer screen, 2 power poles, a tree, and this mysterious HEV suit. It appears in a few test maps, and interacting with it does nothing. The last test map is Goods Gibbs. It's a pretty big closed-off area, it has a few posters on the walls, a truck, and a shitload of breakable props. Next, there's the multiplayer maps. Right now you might be going, wait, but Postal 3 didn't have multiplayer. And you would be right. Postal 3's scrapped multiplayer is a whole other topic we'll explore later. Multiplayer maps can be identified by their file names. Maps meant for deathmatch have the prefix DM, and maps meant for capture the flag have the prefix CTF. A few of the maps have versions for both deathmatch and capture the flag, and a few of them have versions without any prefix, possibly to be used in the campaign. A few of them are remakes of maps from Postal 2's multiplayer. Sometimes, one of the versions will be slightly less unfinished than the others, one example being Clinic. Mountains, dirt bike tracks, and caves are all pretty similar, featuring some simple terrain and maybe a few decorations here and there. TF is slightly more advanced, as it features both terrain and an empty building. Park consists of a building surrounded by a few trees. In a similar vein, Hub Home Inside and Hub House 2 both consist of single houses isolated from other maps. From the few remaining maps, Hub 2 is the most unfinished one. It's a rough draft of what was probably meant to be one of the 3 Rome maps. Hub 1 Houses Test is very unfinished and is full of error models. Warehouse is a pretty decent map for the alpha standards, but it's nothing to write home about. City is a pretty small part of a city, with big brown buildings akin to Postal 2's industrial area. World is an early version of the game's second mission. Its layout is similar, but has minor differences in several places. The map, simply titled Hub, is an early version of the first free roam area in the game. It features several differences from the final version. The two most noteworthy ones are the presence of an underground metro and the inclusion of Huge Mart, which was placed in a different part of the city in the final game. The coolest map included in the alpha is Town. Old school fans will recognize it as the map shown when the game was first presented to the public. It's the only map of unique Postal-free NPCs. There's even police officers, which reuse the Half-Life 2 Metrocop AI. Aside from one error model, it's as good as it probably could be. It's really cool to experience this map in action. Those were all the maps included in the Postal-free alpha, but that's not the end of our deep dive into the leaked files. Alongside the build, we also got a folder full of early Postal-free design documents. These are filled to the brim with detail about most features of the game, providing the reader with a pretty clear image of how the game was originally supposed to look like. So, how different is it from the final product? According to the documents, after escaping Paradise, the dude's car runs out of gas, and he visits the nearby town of Catharsis to work shitty temp jobs. Right off the bat, there are already differences compared to the final game. After arriving in Catharsis, instead of instantly going to get a job at Ron Jeremy's shop, the dude sees a political rally, where the mayor gives a speech about his values. A wheelchair-bound terrorist tries to blow up the mayor, but since he can't get up because of his wheelchair, he ends up just blowing up a few cars. The dude runs away and notices a group of illegal immigrants jumping the border. He decides to follow them, thinking that they probably know where to get a job, and he ends up at the employment agency. From this point on, the story revolves around the dude taking up one shitty temp job after another, just like the final game. However, the way the dude gets these jobs is very different. As a reminder, the final game follows a linear structure. You play each mission straight after the last one is over. There are free roam segments, but those are always parts of bigger errands, unless you play the free roam mode unlocked after beating the campaign. The alpha structure was more akin to Postal 2. The plan was to have 5 large free roam hubs. To start missions, the player would go to one employer, which changes depending on which path the player is on, after which they would go to a linear map that's connected to the main hub. After finishing the mission, the layout of the mission level would be slightly changed and added to the hub as a free roam segment that the player may visit if they wish to do so. The first hub is described as a suburban area, with an adult movie shop on one side and a mega mall on the other. You might recognize this as the first free roam area in the game, as Hub 1 is the only alpha hub that made it to the final game. The map is pretty similar to the final game, however, the mall was moved to a different map. The map's document mentions a lot of features that were never added. The freeway that the dude starts next to was supposed to be full of traffic, which the player could throw explosives into to cause chaos. The documents also mention another scrapped mechanic, the subway. It was meant to be a fast travel system, which would allow the player to travel to a specific map without needing to walk through all of Catharsis. The underground parts were also supposed to be bigger, having things like alternate entrances into certain buildings, while in the final game it's reduced to a straight line from one point to another. The document also contains maps and notes for some of the houses, one of which belongs to a meth dealer. Awesome segue, let's talk about items and weapons. Let's get the weapons out of the way. These weapons made it into the final game. The shovel, the nightstick, the nail bat, the taser, the machete, the badger saw, the gasoline can, the pistol, the assault shotgun, the M60, the assault rifle, grenades, the rocket launcher, the Molotov cocktail, the beehive, the pepper spray, and the shop vac. Something interesting to note is that the weapons were originally supposed to have alternate, non-lethal firing modes. The nail bat was supposed to be able to turn into a wiffle bat, the badger saw was supposed to turn into a piss cannon, the firearms were supposed to have rubber bullets and paintball rounds, the alternate grenades were meant to be Mentos and Diet Pepsi bombs, and the rocket launcher was supposed to be able to shoot melons. Certain weapons also have interactions not seen in the final game. For example, you were supposed to be able to throw the gas canister in the air and shoot it to rain gasoline. There were a few weapons that didn't make it in. One is simply titled Club, which instead of being a simple weapon is more like a category of random things that dude can pick up. An auto shotgun was planned, but got scrapped from the final game. The scissors were planned to make a return from Postal 2, with optional non-lethal safety scissors. Another cut weapon is the chain scythe, which actually appears in Postal 4. However, it is unknown if the Postal 3 version was also based on the sickle held by the dude on the cover of Postal X. The dead pigeon is a rework of the deceased cowhead. If shot, the pigeon would explode, creating a larger poison cloud. They could also be fed to cats, creating little avian flu carriers. Another generic weapon that was planned but somehow didn't make it in is the sniper rifle. C4 was meant to behave how you would expect it to, as a sticky bomb. Moving on to the items, you might recall that, wait, Postal 3 didn't have any items. While the final game lacks an inventory system, the game was originally planned to feature items, just like Postal 2. The donut, pizza, bag of fast food, bus sniffer, and dog biscuit all returned from Postal 2, keeping their functionality. The health pipe also returns, although with different mechanics. It doesn't overheal you to 125 HP, instead giving the player a decent HP boost. The withdrawal mechanic is also gone, but it temporarily decreases your movement rate and makes melee weapons worse, alongside making the screen slightly more saturated. The Postal 2 health pipe mechanics return in the form of meth. It has the same downsides as the new health pipe, but it overheals the player to 125 HP. Withdrawal also returns, but instead of damaging the dude, it makes him temporarily slower and less accurate. The game's colors would be desaturated while on meth, to make taking it feel depressing. The final drag in the game is Oxycontin, which overheals the player to 150 HP and decreases damage taken, at the cost of all other drag downsides: slow movement, less accuracy, and less melee damage. Oxycontin's unique mechanic is drag tolerance. Each use of the drag is less effective than the last, requiring the player to consume more and more to achieve the full effect. After the first 3 uses, the classic Postal 2 withdrawal will be added as another side effect. The existence of healing items implies that the player wouldn't regenerate health by taking cover. Indeed, none of the design documents mention cover, as Postal 3 wasn't meant to be a cover shooter. The biggest piece of evidence supporting this theory is design document number 5, Gameplay. This document has a list of major gameplay differences to Postal 2, and Postal 3 being an entirely different genre of shooter isn't mentioned, nor is it mentioned anywhere else. Coming back to the items, Catnip was also supposed to return, and it actually made it into the final game, but as a weapon. Same for the new laser pen, although it was supposed to have more functionality than just directing animals, like blinding people. A few items that didn't make it in are the Candy Bar, an item which would slightly increase the player's health and make them temporarily faster, the Five Salad, which would barely heal the dude but could be given to certain NPCs to heal them, the Medkit, which interestingly enough implies it would be a usable item and not an instant use object like in every other Postal game, Bird Seeds, which you could use to bait pigeons, and a Dog Shock Collar, which you could toss onto people to zap them and make their heads explode. Coming back to the story, at this point the player would visit the employment agency and would get directed to the first mission, helping Ron Jeremy at his store. Alternatively, the player could stumble into the store, skipping the agency. The setup for the mission is the same as in the final game. Ron needs help cleaning suspiciously sticky tissues from the floor, and the dude receives the shop vac. This early version has slight differences, like making the dude incinerate the tissues by throwing them into a burning dumpster. After incinerating 10 tissues, hockey moms attack the store, and the dude has to drive them away by shooting tissues at them, just like in the final game. If the dude completed the mission as intended, Ron gives him some money, which he doesn't do in the final game, lets him keep the shop vac, and tells him to come back anytime to make more money. If the dude somehow manages to kill the hockey moms, Ron Jeremy threatens to call the cops unless the dude leaves immediately. The second mission is the Diseased Cat Roundup. The first part of the mission is the same as the final game, having the player collect a certain number of cats, luring them with catnip. The second part, however, is very different. The restaurant that wanted the cats wasn't owned by Mexicans, but by the Vietnamese, and they were led by Kim Jong-un. This mission was meant to introduce the Bus Sniffer, having an NPC try to use it before getting killed by dervish cats. The Vietnamese were meant to strongly outnumber the player, making them use the Bus Sniffer to avoid enemies in a stealth section. If the dude gets caught, all your collected cats get stolen and you have to collect them again. If the dude manages to get all 10 cats alive, the head cat catcher announces that the operation will probably be investigated by the police, but he still pays the dude for his trouble. Kim Jong-un then offers him another potential job, bring him cats for money, an idea that training officers would shamelessly steal for Paradise Lost. If the dude killed any of the cats, he ends up getting fired. The Vietnamese restaurant owners offer to buy the dead cats from him, so the dude ends up getting paid either way. The third mission doesn't appear at all in the final game. Green Herb Enforcement Action, performed for the DEA. The dude, alongside the illegal immigrants he followed earlier, are taught to use gasoline for controlled fires, and are tasked with burning a weed plantation. The plantation is owned by ecotologists, a group that's best described as Scientologists combined with PETA. They'll attack the dude if they spot him burning their weed. The fourth mission is an expanded version of the final game's third mission, Jen Walcott's bodyguard, known in the docs as Huge Mart Security Guard. The mission starts with the dude in his security guard uniform. A senior guard teaches the dude how to use a taser. Instead of just knocking people down to complete the mission, this early version had the player dragging their unconscious bodies to holding cells. The first half of the mission has you protecting Walcott from creeps, and the second half has you protecting her from soccer moms. After getting rid of all the soccer moms, it turns out all the customers ran away during the chaos. The dude gets offered another money-making opportunity, and Jennifer brags about her skills with guns. As an observant and very handsome viewer, you might have realized that the tutorial level, Paradise Dream Bridge, hasn't been mentioned yet. Instead of having a dedicated tutorial mission, the plan was to have the first few missions teach the player the game's mechanics. The Ron Jeremy mission teaches the player how to use the shop vac, The Zest Cat Roundup teaches the player how cats work and how to use the bus sniffer. Green Herb Enforcement Action teaches the player how gasoline works. And Huge Mart Security Guard teaches the player the basics of playing non-lethal. The way these dogs are written implies that these first 4 missions could be played in any order, after which a cutscene would trigger. Champ fights a monkey, ecotologists come to scold the dude for abusing Champ, and Champ bites one of the ecotologists in the nuts. The dude gets arrested and taken to court. He gets sentenced to anger management therapy, and Champ is sentenced to dog obedience school. Therapy is a scrapped mechanic. At set points in the story, and whenever the player feels like it, the dude was supposed to go to a therapist and talk about his issues. The sessions were meant to be cutscenes, where the therapist would judge the dude and offer tips and hints. The game would track different statistics about the player's gameplay, and choose the therapy topic appropriately. For example, if the player used a lot of fire weapons, the therapist would talk about fire. These were meant to encourage the player to play the good path, with the therapist mentioning that being a good person opens many doors. After the first therapy session ends, the dude goes to obedience training with Champ, starting the 5th mission, the Champ Whisperer. This mission appears in the final game's Insane Path, but is completely different from this initial idea. The dude meets Miller Caesarian, a parody of the dog whisperer, Caesar Milan. The first part of the mission has the dude play fetch with Champ. After that, Champ spots a cat and immediately attacks it. Miller introduces a new item, the electric shock collar. He considers them to be cruel, but effective. He brings in a homeless man with a collar around his neck and orders him to attack the dude. The homeless man refuses and gets shocked, after which he attacks the dude while apologizing. Champ immediately loses interest in the cat and starts attacking the hobo. Miller introduces another item, the laser pointer, and explains that dogs will follow the laser. After leading Champ around in circles, he shines the laser at the homeless man, making Champ attack him. Afterwards, it's revealed that the part of the floor they were standing on is an elevator, which isolates the dude and Miller from Champ, while also providing a good view of the obstacle course on the other side of the room. The player regains control, and you're tasked with leading Champ through the obstacle course with the laser pointer. There are also a few homeless people that Champ can attack if the player shines the laser at them. The elevator lowers to the floor, and Miller teaches the dude about dog health. He tases Champ and gives him a slice of pizza to show that you can revive dogs with food. He informs the dude that they're done and that he can pick up his diploma and leave. The dude has had enough of this and punches Miller, which makes Champ attack him. After Miller gets punched, all the kennels around them open and Miller's dogs attempt to defend him. After the player fights with all the dogs, the dude grabs the diploma and he and Champ escape the building. To access the 6th mission, the player first needs to travel to Hub 2, Town Square. A very early version of it is included in the 2008 alpha build, but there are screenshots of a more finished version of it from later in development. The documents describe it as the nice area of town, almost a classic 1950s version of reality. Despite the fact that none of the buildings here are brand new, the area is generally clean and well cared for except for the cash checking place, which represents the enroaching urban decay that will be revealed in more detail in the ghetto map. It is a tiny, incongruous taste of the ghetto beginning to fester. Otherwise, the grass is green, trees are healthy, streets and sidewalks are in good condition. Large Bucks coffee houses are multiplying like rabbits. The NPCs in this area are predominantly white. One of the buildings is the Margins bookstore, which is where the next mission takes place. The 6th mission, Book Hunter, doesn't appear in the final game. When walking past the bookstore, the dude sees a giant line of nerds and a few hockey moms protesting. A second handicapped Taliban appears and blows up part of the line, which the people further back immediately take advantage of. The dude overhears some of the nerds talking about what's happening. A new hit book just came out, Harry Mohammed and the Jew of Azkaban, and Al-Qaeda blew up the factory producing it. Only one copy made it to Catharsis, and this bookstore is gonna raffle it off. Recognizing the basic rules of supply, demand, and making a shitload of money, the dude knows he needs to get the book. The dude pushes past the line and runs through the door. In the first gameplay section, the fanboys try to stop the dude. Your goal is to run through the bookstore, fighting nerds along the way. The dude eventually gets to the store clerk, Sean Baby, played by himself. He's holding the only copy of the book and is treated as a godlike figure by the nerds. As the dude ponders how to get the book from him, a group of soccer moms break in through the window, screaming about the book being inappropriate. Moments later, a second window explodes and the Taliban run in, demanding the heads of the creators. Seconds later, the whole wall explodes and a bunch of Uncle Dave's nuns break in. However, they're just pulling a publicity stunt for the opening of Daveland, Uncle Dave's new theme park, and they immediately leave. Meanwhile, ecotologists burst in through the entrance and start burning down books as a form of protest. Realizing they're short on time, the dude, soccer moms, and the Taliban all lunge at Sean Baby. All the NPCs target whoever currently has the book. Once everyone is either stunned or dead, the dude finally gets the book. The store is getting engulfed by flames, and the third gameplay section begins. The dude has to escape the burning shop in a sequence that would probably be very similar to Postal 2's burning library segment. As he exits the building, the dude sells the book to one of the fanboys. The nerd pays with a check, which the dude has to cash in. He notices a no questions asked cash emporium across the street. The 7th mission is called Cashtown Robbery, and it's more or less the same mission as Cash Mart Robbery from the final game. As the dude tries to cash his check, a group of ecotologists arrive to rob the bank. One of the employees manages to hit an alarm and the police arrive. The dude ponders in his head. Maybe he should help the police and possibly get a reward. Or maybe he should help the ecotologists in exchange for a cut of the money. Or maybe he should get out of there as soon as he can. The player has to choose a side. Help the police or help the ecotologists. Alternatively, you could shoot at both groups. The shootout gets more intense with time. SWAT starts rappelling from the roof, and a police helicopter starts indiscriminately firing bullets and rockets into the building. If the player didn't pick a side, the dude realizes that none of the employees are alive enough to cash his check. This also means that no one is there to stop him from robbing the vault, although the game would leave that for the player to figure out themselves. If the dude sided with ecotologists, they give him a cut of the money and invite him to drop by their headquarters for more work. If the dude sided with the police, he gets invited to join the force. This is a choice given to the player, which they could accept or deny. Postal 3 famously features two paths, the good path and the insane path. The original plan was to have three paths, the good, the bad, and the insane. In the final game, the good path is the one where the dude becomes a cop, and the insane path is the one where the dude does whatever he can for money, whether that's working for ecotologists, politicians, or whoever else is willing to pay. The choice is made in the robbery mission, and the only way to change paths is to kill people in the good path, which drops the player to the insane path. The idea presented in the documents is quite different. The insane path would be the default path, and the player could branch off into the good and bad paths at will. The bad path missions are given out by the ecotologists, and the good path missions are given out by the police. The bad path is described as more of a chain of side quests than a proper path, as it doesn't impact the overall story or progression, and it doesn't have an ending unlike the good or insane path. It's possible to lock yourself out of paths. The bad path gets permanently locked out if the player is aggressive towards the ecotologists, and the good path gets dropped if the player kills people. However, it's possible to rejoin the good path. If the player plays pacifist for a few insane path missions, does certain things in certain missions like attack ecotologists in the bad path missions, or does nice deeds in the open world in front of the police, it's possible that the dude gets invited to join the force, even if he was previously fired. All path progress is saved, which in practice means that if you get fired and then rejoin the force, you start the good path right where you left off. Same for the insane path. If you look at a list of all the missions organized by which path they belong to, you might notice that the bad path is significantly shorter. This is an issue mentioned in the documents, and it's probably the reason why the bad and insane paths are merged together in the final game. Accepting the offer to join the force puts the player on the good path, and denying it puts the player on the insane path. The first insane path mission is titled Day Labor Dude. The dude gets hired by the ecotologist to pick apples. How exciting. After picking enough apples, one of the ecotologists pays the dude and tells him to drop by their HQ if he wants more work. From now on, the player may do the bad path missions for the ecotologists. Unlike the main parts of Catharsis, which take place in a desert environment, the Zealot HQ is inside of a forest. The first bad path mission is called Meet the Zealots. Al Gore welcomes the dude, and he immediately teaches him how to shove a grenade up a cat's ass. The dude asks Al Gore how exactly shoving grenade up cat rectums helps fight against animal cruelty, but Al ensures him that those cats are proud to die for the cause. This mission acts as a tutorial on how to use animal-based weapons. The first bit of gameplay has the player use a laser pointer to make a live cat grenade run into a dummy painted to look like Hillary Clinton. After that, Al Gore teaches the dude how beehives work. The dude is also taught how to use the ecotologist's most powerful weapon, the Badger Saw. After the dude rips through an army of wooden targets, all painted to look like celebrities, police, and politicians, the Taliban arrives wanting to steal the cat grenade technology. The player has to use what they were taught to defend the ecotologist HQ. After getting rid of the Taliban, the dude passed his training and officially becomes an ecotologist. However, his joy is short-lived, as Al Gore immediately introduces the pay-to-advance tier system. The more you pay, the better weaponry you get access to. The second bad path mission is called Monkey Test Lab Assault. The ecotologist's latest plan is to free all the test animals at the local test lab owned by the makeup factory Evolutions. This building is located in the third hub, which is the ghetto. I'd read out the map description like I did with the second hub, however, I don't want the audio of me saying this to be taken out of context. Either way, the ecotologists break in, beat up a scientist, and start freeing the monkeys. Someone calls the police, and a firefight begins. The player doesn't have to fight the police, your goal is to free all the monkeys. The monkeys randomly attack people on both sides, but since your goal is to free them, you can't defend yourself. Once all the monkeys are freed, the ecotologists escape. They celebrate their victory, while most of the monkeys they just freed are killed behind their backs. The third bad path mission is called 4 on Fire. The dude, alongside several other ecotologists, enter the mall, and Al tells the dude what they're gonna do. Clothing made of fur is a product of animal abuse, thus they need to get rid of it. The mission is simple, burn 20 fur coats. The mall security and police soon arrive to take care of you. After you're done, the ecotologists escape. This mission has something unique about it. If the player isn't on the bad path, they may visit the mall anyway and see this mission take place. The ecotologists don't stop causing chaos just because the dude doesn't join them. The world goes on without him. Some would say this makes Postal 3 an immersive sim. The fourth bad path mission is called Gay Rodeo. Interestingly enough, none of the maps included in the documents feature a way to get to the rodeo. The mission begins with a cutscene where a pit boss talks with Randy Jones. The pit boss explains that he wasn't able to find any cows for his event, but he luckily found something even better, a rhino that's been painted to look like a cow. The ecologists arrive to the scene. Their latest protest involves injecting a shitload of meth into the animals so that they go berserk. The dude once again asks about ethics, and Al once again reassures him that the rhino would gladly sacrifice itself for the greater good. He hands the dude a few meth-filled syringes and a sniper rifle. The player has to hit the rhino with the meth-filled syringe sniper rifle 20 times while avoiding the police. After that, the rhino suddenly explodes out of the pen, with Randy Jones riding on top of it. The ecologists celebrate their victory, shortly before realizing that they're just as fucked as everyone else. The rhino runs into a power pole, causing a chain reaction that ignites everything around it. The second gameplay section begins. The player has to avoid both the meth-filled rhino and the police while escaping the rodeo. The ending cinematic shows the ecologists escaping the scene, while everyone else is getting massacred in the background. The fifth Batpath mission is called Burn a House, Save a Tree. During the night, a few ecologists sneak into a construction site, which is right next to the fifth hub, the border town, which is described as an area of both extreme wealth and extreme poverty. Al explains their latest scheme to the dude. To protest cutting down forests, they will destroy the construction site. The dude once again asks if the scheme won't achieve the exact opposite result, and he's once again assured that those trees would gladly give up their lives for the cause. To complete the mission, the player needs to destroy a certain amount of stuff. The document suggests it should be around 75% of everything. At a certain point, the police arrive, as always, and the player has to manage both destroying stuff and not getting a bullet between the dude's eyes. After accomplishing their goal of forcing the construction company to destroy even more trees, they quietly sneak away. The sixth and last Batpath mission is called Assault on Precinct 69. The ecologists sneak up to the police station in broad daylight, as the police wouldn't expect an attack during the day. They are hoping to free the locked up ecologists before they get transferred to prison. Of course, as is common for games like this, you have to do most of the work. The police station is a huge map consisting of 3 floors, each big enough to get its own document. This mission is meant to be played using stealth. However, unlike the Deceased Cat Roundup mission, getting caught doesn't reset progress. It just means that you'll have to fight all the police officers. After freeing all the locked up ecologists, the dude yells at his supposed partners, enraged about having to do everything by himself. This is the last mission in the Batpath, so the dude presumably decided to not work with these lazy assholes again. The Good Path, on the other hand, is pretty long. After accepting the offer to join the force, the dude arrives at the police academy. He's greeted by Lieutenant Griggs, and training immediately begins. The first part of the training teaches the dude how to quickly enter houses. Lieutenant Griggs shows the dude how to kick open doors and jump through windows, after which the dude has to quickly complete an obstacle course. The second lesson given to the dude is about how to arrest people. Lieutenant Griggs pulls out an actual crackhead, who probably wasn't that hard to find as the police academy is inside the ghetto, and orders the dude to stand and arrest him. 7 more homeless people and Jehovah's Witnesses are brought in, and the player has to arrest all of them under a time limit. After that, the third lesson begins. The dude and Lieutenant Griggs go to the shooting range, and the dude is instructed to only shoot at the targets with criminals on them. Some targets have cartoon images of masked burglars and terrorists, others have drawings of grandmas and little girls, and a few may or may not have real people strapped to them. A few of the targets are equipped with paintball guns, which shoot at the dude, forcing him to duck and take cover. The fourth gameplay section is a combination of the first and third, having the dude run through an obstacle course while he's shooting at targets and avoiding their paintball shots. The fifth and final section teaches the dude about the police's most powerful tool, controlled airstrikes. Lieutenant Griggs shows the dude a police radio. If used one way, it calls for reinforcements. If used the other way, it calls a helicopter attack strike. He makes it clear to the dude that this option is available to only high-ranking officers, so that's one of the incentives to stay on the good path. He also explains that the airstrike will be aimed wherever the pilot feels like, unless the strike is guided by a laser pen, which is showcased by the reinforcements called seconds earlier getting accidentally airstriked. After the dude performs an airstrike on a wooden shack, he gets officially accepted as a new member of the force. He gets his badge, which allows him to access the police armory, and gets informed that from now on he will get missions from the briefing room. Lieutenant Griggs explains other perks of being a cop, most of which are reused from when the dude impersonates police members in Postal 2, but some are new, like certain vendors giving you free samples in exchange for coming back to protect them. The second Good Path mission is called Monkey Tesla Assault. Once again, as a very smart and handsome viewer, you might be thinking, wait, wasn't Monkey Tesla Assault one of the missions in the Bad Path? Yes, it was. If you take a look at the mission list sorted by path, you might notice that some missions appear in 2 or even 3 paths. These aren't 1-for-1 repeats, as the goal is different depending on which side the player is on. Missions aren't vague ideas, but set events at set points in time. The design documents are varied throughout, but none of them address repeating missions. Either way, the dude and several other officers are told to go to the test lab as soon as possible to stop ecologists, which are currently releasing all the test monkeys. The player has to arrest them before they free all the monkeys. The ending cutscene is more or less the same as the Batpath ending cutscene, but with the ecologists celebrating their success while they're being arrested. The third good buff mission is called Monkey Hunter. It only appears in the good buff if the player failed to arrest all the ecologists fast enough. This mission is more of an extension of the last one instead of being a proper full mission. The player must capture 20 monkeys, and if the job is done non-lethally, the dude receives his own test monkey as a pet. It should be mentioned that if this mission doesn't get triggered and none of the monkeys died, the dude receives the reward at the end of the previous mission. The fourth good buff mission is called Save Uwe Boll. Uwe Boll, the infamous movie director, is in Catharsis filming his latest movie, based on the fictional arcade game Astro Jihad. As he's talking to one interviewer, a certain organization lets him know that they are not happy about this, and a group of movie nerds join them in protesting Uwe's new movie. The player has to defend Uwe from the Taliban, but nothing more about the gameplay is specified. After getting rid of the last extremist, Uwe yells at the dude for letting his camera get knocked over. The script was also destroyed, but Uwe says that they'll just improvise. The fifth good buff mission is called Arcade Shootout. Apparently, a violent video game made a bunch of teenagers start shooting people. After the police starts shooting back, the gamers have a panic attack about not being able to click off screen. Soccer moms soon appear, giving the police another issue to deal with. The police get the order to move in and stop the gamers. The player has to either arrest or kill all the gamers and soccer moms. Unlike most other maps, the arcade isn't a separate map, instead being part of Hub 3. This means that combat can, and probably will, spill out into the streets. After the shootout is over, the dude leaves the scene as the arcade owner starts threatening the police with a lawsuit for destroying his arcade. The sixth good buff mission is another rerun, Gay Rodeo. The intro cutscene begins the same way as before, with the pit boss talking to Randy Jones. After that, the dude is on duty at the rodeo. The ecologists arrive and the mission begins. At the start, all you have to do is arrest the ecologists causing chaos. After a while, the pen with the now meth-crazed rhino explodes, and it's up to the dude to stop both the ecologists and the rhino. After both of the threats have been dealt with, the gay pit boss thanks the dude for saving his rodeo, and asks him out on a date. The dude doesn't accept. The seventh good buff mission is also a repeat, burn a house, save a tree. As the ecologists arrive on the construction site with the intent of wrecking the place, the dude appears dramatically from the darkness and tells the ecologists that they're all under arrest for trespassing. The gameplay of this mission is more or less the same as most other good buff missions, arrest or kill all the ecologists. In the ending cinematic, the dude uses his police radio to call for ambulances if the mission was done non-lethally, or for body bags if the player took a less merciful approach. The next mission is called Gay Segway Biker Race. It's not triggered through the job agency or the briefing room, instead the player has to find this mission on their own, meaning it's completely optional. To trigger it, the player needs to visit the biker bar, which is located in the last hub that hasn't been discussed yet, Hub 4, Outskirts. One of the oldest and most run-down parts of Catharsis, originally a ghetto-like warehouse district, which has now been transformed and reclaimed by the minorities of the city. The buildings are clearly very old and worn out, but have been repainted to somewhat hide that fact. The map borders with a giant lake, apparently a result of global warming, the mall and the prison. Between those two buildings is the Load Ranger, the earlier mentioned biker bar. Once the dude enters it, he gets challenged by Randy Jones and his crew to a Segway race. The Segways are one of the two vehicles mentioned in the document, and they are the only ones that made it to the final game. If the player wins the race, he gets Randy Jones' own custom Segway. The 8th good buff mission is the final repeat from the bad buff, Assault on Precinct 69. The dude is hanging out with the other officers, and they overhear a discussion that's happening outside. Al Gore explains to one of the recruits that the police would never expect an assault in broad daylight. The gameplay is, yet again, an inverse of the bad buff version. Instead of freeing the prisoners from their cells, the player has to instead prevent the ecologists from doing that very thing. After all of them are defeated, the dude and his buddies celebrate their victory. The 9th good buff mission is titled Psycho Killer. The police receive a complaint from a few people in the outskirts part of town about strange noises and odors coming from their neighbor's house. The dude goes to investigate, but no one answers the door. He decides to go inside anyway and discovers furniture and art made out of human remains. In the basement, he finds a lot of bodies. At that moment, he hears the front door slam. The killer is inside the house. The goal of the mission is to kill or arrest him. A health/consciousness bar appears on screen, meaning that to arrest the killer, the dude will first need to deal enough damage to him. The killer has the home court advantage, as the house is full of secret pathways that the killer can use to sneak up on the dude, which means that 1 second the dude will see him run behind a corner in front of him, and a second later the killer will be behind the dude, ready to attack, making the mission very tense. Eventually, the killer is either unconscious or dead. Lieutenant Griggs soon arrives to the scene and tells the dude that he would commend him for a job well done, if not for the fact that he just beat the shit out of the mayor's nephew. The dude will have to pay for the damages done to the house, and is being temporarily transferred to the border patrol until the whole thing blows over. The 10th good buff mission, Border Patrol, starts immediately after the last mission ends. The dude arrives on his first day on the border. His new superior explains that his job will consist of preventing Mexicans from illegally entering the country. The dude is placed on top of a watchtower and is given a sniper rifle, which can be used with either lethal or non-lethal ammo. Not long after, the dude notices the first group trying to cross the border, but something about them feels off. He soon realizes that these people aren't Mexicans, but the Taliban wearing cheap sombreros and ponchos as disguises. Taliban or Mexican, the method that the player uses to discourage them from crossing the border is the same. After all the illegals are stopped, the dude is commended for a job well done. The dude gives a short speech about the importance of protecting America, while other terrorists use him being distracted to quickly cross the border. The 11th Good Path mission is titled Eco HQ Assault. The dude gets promoted from Border Patrol to SWAT, as the police's next operation will require all the firepower they can get. Lieutenant Griggs received a tip on where the Ecotologist compound is located, and so today is the day where the police launches an all-out assault. The goal of the mission is to fight your way through the compound to find and arrest Al Gore. After the dude completes his goal, he, once again, gets commended for a job well done. When he asks for a raise, Lieutenant Griggs laughs in his face. The next mission is optional, just like Gay Segway Biker Race. Ultimate Fight Club can be accessed on any path by entering the secret underground cave in the Border Town Hub. It's more of a minigame than a proper mission. Pay an entry fee and battle people. If you win, you get more money. If you lose the entry fee. Simple as that. The 12th Good Path mission is titled The Motorcade. All the cops are lined up, while a member of the Secret Service walks past them. He informs them that they need the department's best, brightest man to join them. They also need to be size 42, as they only have one spare suit. The dude applies, and he learns what this is all for. The mayor is gonna be giving a speech at Daveland, and he needs to be safely escorted there. He will be driven inside seemingly the only operational car in all of Catharsis, and the dude, alongside the other Secret Service members, is tasked with protecting him from snipers and bomb throwers across Hub 3, 4, and 5. After the mayor is safely escorted, he thanks the dude and starts preparing for his speech. The 13th Good Path mission is titled Daveland. Daveland is Uncle Dave's latest scheme. He realized that the best way to lure women into his cult is to start a religious amusement park. The dude, alongside the rest of the Secret Service, watches as the mayor gives his speech to the public. He announces that he managed to strike a truce with the Taliban, and the Taliban arrives to confirm his claims. Soon after, more Taliban arrive. The enraged second Taliban leader grabs the first, after which the first leader quickly confesses. They are not really the Taliban, they are just actors hired by the mayor so that he could get more votes. The mayor quickly flees the scene, while the real Taliban go postal on everyone around them. After the player stuns, kills or arrests all the Taliban, the dude looks for the mayor. Eventually, he finds him, and the mission turns into an escort mission. Once the mayor is escorted out of Daveland, the 14th mission begins, Why We Invented Santa Claus. The city hall is putting up holiday decorations. A Jew notices there's no Hanukkah imagery and gets mad. A black man notices there's no Kwanzaa imagery and also gets mad. Then a Muslim, a pagan, a Satan worshipper, and so on and so on. Looking closer, the decoration in question is a secular peace tree, made in an attempt to not offend anyone. All the groups start a riot, and the player is tasked with restoring order, whether that's by arresting people, stunning them, or killing them, whatever is needed. After a while, the final mission begins, Apocalypse again. Foreign tanks and military arrive to the scene and start shooting at random people. It's Hugo Chavez and his Venezuelan army, who came to liberate Catharsis from its oppressive regime. Around the same time, Al Gore breaks out of prison, stands on top of a building, looks at all the scum fighting below him, and uses his final option to save Gaia. He unleashes a plague of badgers upon the now burning city. Al Gore is the first to get eaten alive by his own animal army. The dude goes up to a fallen SWAT member, grabs his Kevlar vest, and, alongside the rest of the PD and random citizens, gets ready to defend Catharsis. After the player defeats 30 combatants, the game ends. The game skips forward a few months, and we see the end of an A&E biography about the dude. Having distinguished himself with his patriotic stand against the Venezuelan invaders, he became a sensation, and the dude mania caused him to find his final shitty temp job, being President of the United States. As he enters the Oval Office, he discovers the comically big red Start Nuclear War button is real, and not something invented by cartoons. A mischievous look crosses his face, and the screen fades to black as the dude starts laughing. If the player managed to complete the game pacifist, instead of skipping forward, the dude realizes that, despite everything he did for this town, his car is still out of gas. As he's thinking about what he needs to do to get out of Catharsis, Jennifer Walcott pulls over in a hammer that she stole from Al Gore and picks up both dude and Trump. The dude finds a lottery ticket under the seat and he jokes about becoming rich with Jennifer. Then, we once again skip a few months to the end of an A&E biography. The dude ended up marrying Jennifer after winning the lottery. The trio of the dude, Jennifer, and Trump have moved to the world's most expensive trailer home on a private island in the South Pacific. Very cool, but really, who cares? You don't play Postal to arrest movie nerds, you play Postal to shoot fat people with a rocket launcher. Let's go back to, hopefully, the most entertaining path, the Insane Path. We already discussed the first Insane Path mission before we entered the Bad Path, so we're gonna skip that one. The second Insane Path mission is titled Monkey Test Lab Assault. Yes, this mission appears in every single path. The dude has been hired to clean monkey shit from the cages in the test lab. He arrives to the job, one of the scientists gives him instructions and then leaves for lunch. After sacking up some of the shit with the shop vac, the dude decides to look back and admire his work, and accidentally leans against the Open All Cages button. The dude realizes that if he leaves the place looking like this, he won't get paid. The confused monkeys don't immediately try to escape the lab, and the second part of the mission has the player stack them up and shoot them back into their cages. The dude finishes caging up all the monkeys seconds before the scientist comes back. He congratulates him on a job well done, and offers to let the dude buy a special motorhead monkey from him at any time. The third Insane Puff mission is optional, a repeat of the Good Puff's Monkey Hunter. The ecotologist freed a bunch of the scientist's monkeys, and he asks for help with getting them back. As a reminder, most of the Insane Puff missions aren't given specifically to the dude like in the Good and Bad Puffs, and are instead jobs posted on the board in the employment agency for anyone to grab. The gameplay of this section is exactly the same as the Good Puff. The player needs to collect 20 monkeys and bring them back to the scientist. If the player failed to save all the monkeys, the scientist refuses to pay. One of the Vietnamese restaurant workers shows up and offers to buy the dead monkeys for half of what the scientist would pay. The fourth Insane Puff mission is also optional, and it's also a repeat of a Good Puff mission. Save Uwe Boll is the same from start to end. Uwe is filming a movie, and the Taliban and a group of nerds attack him. The dude may either help Boll to complete the mission, or the player could completely ignore the chaos, or even help the Taliban in splattering Uwe's brains across the nearby wall. The fifth Insane Puff mission, Arcade Shootout, is also completely the same as the Good Puff version, but unlike the previous two missions, it's not optional. Help save the arcade from old women and violent gamers. The sixth Insane Puff mission is titled Malaysian Slave Boy Escort Mission. The dude walks into the mayor's office and he gets informed on what's going on. An agitated mayor explains that it's very important that his slave boy gets escorted past the dozens of paparazzi looking to get a front page story. Stealth is encouraged, but if the player fails, they can take extreme measures to get rid of the evidence. After reaching the front door, the dude releases the slave boy into the wild. As he's cheering the boy on, he gets run over by a truck. A newspaper appears on screen, the headline article showing the picture of the boy in casts and bandages, exclaiming that he's been adopted by Brad Pitt and Angelina Jolie. The seventh Insane Puff mission is titled Battle Damage Croci. The dude is tasked with delivering the limited edition HIV-infected Croci dolls to the mall. A group of extreme Croci fans really want to get the dolls early, and the dude has to get past them. The dude eventually arrives at Croci's new restaurant, Croci's Toast Salad, only to find an enraged Croci. The dude is not only late, but he also interrupted Croci's meth break. This leads to them fighting, just like in Postal 2. After the battle is over, the dude steals the Croci suit. He ponders how much he could sell it for on eBay, before realizing that he could probably earn more if he dressed up as Croci and sold the limited edition toys himself. After selling 10 to random people, a man in a baby seal mascot costume from the Mexi Sushi restaurant arrives and starts fighting Croci. After the second boss fight of the mission is over, we hear an ambulance arrive, and the dude, still in the Croci costume, leaves the mall. A cowboy pulls up on his Segway and informs Croci that he's gonna be late for his job at the rodeo. The imposter Croci shrugs and drives off with the cowboy. The 8th Insane Puff mission is, once again, Gay Rodeo. The dude, still disguised as Croci, arrives at the rodeo and gets reminded of what his job is. He has to run around with the shop vac and clean the place up, whether that's from rhino shit or sticky tissues. Meanwhile, the ecotologists infiltrate the rodeo. The police and ecotologists start fighting, but gunfire around you doesn't mean that you can stop doing your job. Eventually, the meth-crazed rhino explodes out of the pen, just like in the other puffs. The dude realizes that if the pit boss dies, then he won't get paid. The rhino doesn't take damage from bullets, so he has to be killed by making him run into walls over and over. After the rhino falls unconscious, the pit boss gives imposter Croci his paycheck and asks him out on a date. Before the dude can answer, the rhino regains consciousness and attacks the pit boss. The 9th Insane Puff mission is Psycho Killer, and it's another Good Puff repeat. Unlike on the Good Puff, it's entirely optional on the Insane Puff, and has to be found by the player instead of being listed in the job agency. After killing the killer, instead of getting yelled at by his superior, the dude simply grabs the key and leaves. The 10th Insane Puff mission is titled Chump Rescue. The dude is talking to someone trying to convince him to get a payday loan. Chump attacks the man and chases him away. The dude hears screams in the distance and waits for Chump to come back, but he doesn't. He follows the trail of dog shit into the Mexican restaurant, where he discovers that the refrigerator door leads to the sewer system. After exploring the sewers for a while, he finds Al Gore talking to Kim Jong-il and the makeup scientist. He's been their main animal supplier all along. They spot the dude, Kim and the scientist run away, and a henchman fires a rocket that makes Rebel block the escape path, so the dude can only go forward. What follows is the typical Postal 3 mission where you progress through a linear level while shooting at enemies. Eventually, the dude finds Chump locked in a cage. After that, one more linear section begins, but this time the dude fights alongside Chump. After they escape, the dude is relieved to be reunited with his companion, but the nice moment ends early when Chump almost immediately starts chasing after a cat. The 11th Insane Puff mission is titled Mexican Viagra Courier. Uncle Dave asked the dude to get some supplies for the grand opening after party of his new theme park, specifically from La Farmacia in Zanja de la Orina in Mexico. After exploring the city, the dude finds the pharmacy, but the United States dollar became so weak that the pharmacy only accepts pesos. The dude doesn't have any pesos, so he visits the local employment agency, but leaves soon after as he can't speak Spanish. Outside, someone offers him a job. He explains that it's Mexican Christmas, and that the children won't have any presents unless they are shipped over the border by courier especial. The player has to throw presents over the border with the shop vac without letting the border patrol spot them. After a while, the camera pans to a hill overlooking the town. The Mexican mayor notices the dude smuggling drugs, something that only he's allowed to do. He calls the DEA to arrest him, and no matter what the player does, the dude eventually gets arrested, ending the mission. The 12th Insane Puff mission is titled Prisoner Without a Clue. The dude arrives in prison in his new orange jumpsuit without any of his weapons or items. He gets quickly approached by a nicotologist who offers him an escort job. The dude gets pissed before the ecotologist clarifies that he didn't mean that type of escort job. They want him to escort Al Gore out of prison and says that if the dude can provide a distraction, they'll provide an escape route. The dude starts thinking of a good distraction, but eventually gets distracted himself before noticing that all the Taliban in prison look very sad. He decides to cheer them up by drawing a nice cartoon for them. After seeing the drawing, they become furious and start a riot. The ecotologist comes back with Al Gore, and the dude is told to follow the spray-painted arrows to the exit. He also gets the only weapon the ecologist could find inside, the shop vac. The gameplay is your standard escort mission. The player has to defend themselves and Al Gore from rioting inmates and prison guards. After successfully escaping prison through a hole in the wall, Al Gore thanks the dude and rewards him with a glorious 20% discount on his next purchase at the ecologist store. The dude is speechless as Al Gore walks away. The 13th Insane Puff mission is titled Daveland. The dude gets hired by Uncle Dave to run the AV equipment at his park. The job is simple: insert the tape into the VCR and play it on cue. The dude somehow manages to mess it up and he inserts the wrong tape. As Uncle Dave gives him the cue, a different tape starts, starring Uncle Dave, several women, farm animals, and industrial machinery. The crowd is disgusted, and Dave screams, "Wait, she told me she was 18, I swear!" The disgusted crowd starts a riot. The dude has to escort Uncle Dave to his emergency escape submarine, located on the other end of the island. A detail that hasn't been mentioned yet is that Daveland is surrounded by water due to global warming. Uncle Dave escapes on the boat alone, which means the dude has to escape Daveland through the main entrance. After the player runs through the main gate, the 14th Insane Puff mission begins, Why We Invented Santa Claus. The setup is the same as in the Good Puff. Every religion and race writes about not being included in the holiday decorations. The player has to survive a certain amount of time, after which the final mission begins. Apocalypse, again, is the final mission, again. The mission setup is the same as in the Good Puff. The Venezuelans attack, and Al Gore releases badgers and gets immediately killed by them. The dude realizes that his only hope of survival is to drive off in his car, which happens to be at the exact opposite end of the city. As Catharsis is currently being set on fire, the most obvious path forward is blocked, and the only way to get to his car is to run through the entire town, which in practice means going through and fighting in every hub. Once the player reaches the dude's car, the ending plays. If the player killed at least one person, the dude is surrounded by the police and the UN. The dude tries to make a last stand and the screen fades to black. Time skips to 6 months later and the dude is being held in solitary confinement. Two guards appear and take him to the execution chamber. He gets strapped into an electric chair, alongside Champ and a monkey in their own chairs, and the dude yells "I regret nothing" as he gets executed. However, if the player killed a very high amount of people, a different ending plays. The dude is enveloped in a bright light. Wings sprout from his back and he laughs as everything becomes clear to him. He's the Angel of Death. With a burning sword in hand, he turns back toward Catharsis to slaughter the wicked and begin the apocalypse. After the credits roll, we see the dude, still laughing, inside of a straitjacket in the insane asylum. That's the original plan for the campaign, but it's not the end of what was planned for Postal 3. There were a few planned rewards for beating the game, like unlockable cheat codes and character models for an entirely separate mode. You see, the single player was just half of what Running with Scissors had planned for Postal 3. They also wanted to have something to keep the game alive for months or even years after release. The multiplayer is described as a vitally important component to Postal 3, which is quite ironic in hindsight. The 2008 build included in the leak has several unfinished multiplayer maps, proving how important it was to the developers. This begs the question, how would the multiplayer look? A lot of the document is filled with basic multiplayer design notes, so let's just get to the interesting stuff. There were plans to bring over the most popular Postal 2 maps, some of which you can find in an unfinished state in the 2008 alpha build. The 4 basic multiplayer modes featured in most online games at the time return in Postal 3: Deathmatch, Team Deathmatch, Capture the Flag, and 1v1s. Just like in Postal 2, Capture the Flag is called Snatch, and instead of flags you capture Postal Babes. There are 4 more modes mentioned. Special Delivery was planned to be the flagship Postal 3 mode. It's based on the, at the time, very popular Airmail mod for Postal 2, which was based on the Quake mod RuneQuake. In short, it's Deathmatch but with Mario Kart item boxes. The idea behind making this the flagship mode is that this type of experience is usually only provided by modders, and that Postal 3 is insane enough to make this into something official. The second new mode is called Grab. The map has bags of money, and the more money a player has, the more damage they deal and the bigger the money bag on their backs is. The first player to collect 10 bags wins, and all money and weapons are dropped on death. The third mode was meant to be co-op, the full single player game but with others. The fourth mode is, by far, the most interesting. Wheelchair Deathmatch, planned as an expansion pack. None of the gameplay is explained. Instead, the document explains why this needs to be an expansion pack, and Running with Scissors plans for it. This mod would be the best thing ever, so developing it would take too much attention away from all the other aspects of the game. Releasing it later would also ensure the fans, and Microsoft, who Running with Scissors was trying to suck up to with the Xbox 360 release, that they care about post-launch support. The marketing potential is also discussed in the document. According to Running with Scissors, wheelchair deathmatch is the kind of concept that would have CNN wanting to report on it. Alongside that, it talks about all the good boy points they could get with the rarely catered to handicapped people. Whoever wrote the document, probably Steve Wick, gives an anecdote on how his mother works at the Help Center for the Disabled, and that many people there are gamers and that they were excited about the idea of wheelchairs in Postal. Imagine how disappointed they must have been with the final product. Running with Scissors would make this mode after fans asked for it enough, since the wheelchairs were so fun in single player, which is weird, since this mode is the only place where wheelchairs are mentioned. There are a few remnants of a multiplayer mode in the final game, and there are mods that restore some of it. Postal 3 sucks, but these documents prove that it didn't have to. All of this begs the question, why doesn't Running with Scissors remake Postal 3, but with it being more like the game the design documents described instead of the final game? They outsourced Postal 3, but these days they clearly have the resources to make games on a bigger scale than Postal 3, and they've proven that they are willing to outsource again. They said multiple times that a Postal 3 redux is never happening, but why? Postal 4 proved that they can make one Postal 2 rerun after another, and a significant portion of the fanbase will be happy. Why take risks? Why innovate on the franchise when the Postal 2 formula works? It's easier to make endless Postal 3 sex jokes and then mock those who dare to go against the dogma, and those that tell Running with Scissors to move on. Postal 3 killed the Postal franchise, but not in the eyes of gamers or the general public, but in the eyes of Running with Scissors. They got hit with bad timing once and learned to never step out of the line set by Postal 2. The positive reception of Paradise Lost reinforced this. Fans get Postal 2, fans are happy, but Running with Scissors doesn't realize it was a fun one-off, a return to the good old days after years of silence, and not confirmation that every game needs to be Postal 2, but with a different map and different missions. To the average Postal fan, as long as the game has surface level similarities to Postal 2, it's good, and no matter how bad it gets, it's at least not as bad as Postal 3. This is a call to action, to demand better games. As a Postal fan, you don't owe Running with Scissors support. You don't need to defend their products when they're straight up bad. You don't need to accept their "oh, but we're a small indie studio" excuses. This isn't 2012. Small teams or even solo developers make great games. If you genuinely care about Postal, demand better, because the franchise deserves better. To not end the video on a negative note, there is still hope for Postal 3. Just because Running with Scissors gave up on it doesn't mean that no one cares about it. There are many mods to look forward to. Catharsis Reborn, Postal 3 Redux, Controlled by Postal, oh, it's dead. Whoops. P3 mod, and probably more that I forgot about. While we will probably never get the game these documents described, that doesn't mean that we'll never get a good version of Postal 3. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, and you probably did since you're here, leave a like, and if you want more content like this in the future, subscribe. Maybe even leave a comment telling me what you think. Oh, and by the way, did you know that you could have seen this video a day early? For just $2 a month, you can become a channel member, which allows you to watch new videos 24 hours before anyone else. You also receive exclusive updates on new content, your name gets added to the special thanks section at the end of my videos, and you get access to Creators Commentary, a series where I watch my own content and provide additional details. Alongside this, you get a badge next to your username and emotes that you can use in my comment section. All of this for just $2 a month, sounds like a good deal to me. Huge thanks to AboveWizard for animating both of the finales. He makes great Postal content which I highly recommend watching.